Superhero media is really hit or miss in terms of its quality, especially in the video game genre. We've had amazing games like Spider-Man PS4 and the Batman Arkham franchise, but we've also had bad games like Superman 64 and obviously the Avengers game. So when Square Enix, out of all companies, announced not another superhero game, but Guardians of the Galaxy game, me and many others are shocked to say the least, and disappointed to say the least. But we wouldn't have to wait too long before we saw what Square Enix had in store for us, since Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy was released on October 26 of 2021, with the game getting generally positive reviews, and it was the second best-selling game in the UK and its launch release, only behind FIFA 2022, which is pretty impressive. Now, I really was going into this game blind because apart from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, I didn't really know the Guardians characters and lore too well since I never read their respective comic book series. But I did like the Guardians movies and I had nothing else to play at the time, so I decided to at least try the Guardians of the Galaxy game out. And to my big surprise, this was one of the funnest games I've played in a while. And that's not to say that other games I've played have not been fun, but it is to say that it's very rare to see a game like this that comes along and jam-packs so many characters in a reasonable and believable way, and it makes for a very fun experience. So grab some popcorn, get your soda, and get comfortable because we're going to be reviewing and unpacking Square Enix's Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. The environments in Guardians of the Galaxy look breathtaking to say the least. Like really, the visuals are on the next level, and this game shows a sliver of what the PS5 can really do at its full potential. And Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is a very colorful game as well, and not just environments wise. The HUD, the subtitles, even the pause menu is very colorful, and I think it benefits in a game like this. Every planet we also visit is very unique, diverse, and of course beautiful in its own way at least. My favorite planet we got to visit was probably Nowhere because of the visual appeal and for the many things you get to do in that planet, like playing a cup game, getting a lottery ticket, and even buying a doll for Gamora. The animations in Guardians of the Galaxy are clean and sleek, just like a brand new car. Now some animations are junky and even disjointed at times, it doesn't look pretty, but the majority of my playthrough had very good animations, especially when Peter gets hit or falls off something. Since this game has ragdoll physics like GTA 4, when Peter or someone else gets hit or falls off for that matter, it is comedy gold. The loading screens in this game are a black screen. What a surprise, am I right? A lot of games have boring or straight up bad looking loading screens, but I think I just expected a better loading screen for this specific game just because of its visual highs and its colorful areas. But I guess you can't get everything you ask for in a game, right? But the performance I had in this game, on the other hand, was very diverse, to say the least. While playing this game, the game was astonishingly good and astonishingly bad at times. Frame rate wise, the frame rate would be at a 70 to 90 frames per second, and that would be pretty good most of the time, but sometimes it would drop to 15 to 8 frames per second, and that is crazy. I was playing this on the PS5, so for this game to be going under 15 frames is ridiculous to me. And Square Enix is not, a new company. Like, they should know that, games don't run at 15 frames per second. That's not how this works, right? But yeah, performance was very up and down for me, for this specific game at least. The soundtrack in Guardians of the Galaxy is splendid. The song Square Enix chose was exceptional to say the least, which is quite a relief since in the Guardians movies and comics, Peter Quill's taste in music was a key factor into his personality. And even the original soundtrack Square Enix created for this game is awesome, with a mix of 80s funky guitar themes to ominous faithful themes. And most of the tracks are played at the right times, which is good. And honestly, if you're a music fanatic like myself, this game's soundtrack will be a dream fest for you. Now the voice acting in this game is also spectacular. The Guardians' voices sound slightly different from their movie counterparts, but not in a bad way, and I think it sets this game apart from the movies in a better way. Everyone does their part very well, and there is some odd delivery here and there, but it's few and far between. But when it does happen, it shocks you, I can't lie. The title screen in this game is really good, not just visually, but it also shows the Guardians' friendship with each other, with Peter, Gamora, Groot, and Drax just vibing out and just enjoying each other's company, which I love, man. It's really cool. There's also a visor mode which lets you see info on your environments, and you can also detect certain objects in this mode. I think the visor visually is very creative, with red, black, and gold being your main three colors. There is also a photo mode in this game, which is really good with having a ton of options and is on par with Marvel's Spider-Man's photo mode. And you can make really creative and cool photos from this photo mode, so I'm glad Square Enix included this into this game because they really did not have to, so I'm glad they took time and effort to put this into this game. It's really cool. Now this game also dabbles with first person mode, and I think it works pretty well, but it's paced awfully, because it happens at the most random times and can last up between 30 seconds to 5 minutes each time it happens. And it doesn't seem that bad at face value, but imagine you're playing a game like Minecraft and you're just, chilling, vibing, breaking trees, building your first house, and you're in first person mode, right? And then the game subtly changes to third person mode without your consent. Yeah, it's kind of like that, and it's very immersion breaking when it happens. And one final small but noteworthy detail to mention is that you only can have 3 save files in this game. This seems like enough on face value, but it really isn't in the grand scheme of things, especially when you see games having 10 plus save files. Sure, you can redo chapters whenever you want, but it still sucks only having 3 save files for this giant game, right? Every member of the Guardians has some sort of arc here, and I'm glad this game gave every member some time to shine and an overall arc for them to go through. And the interactions between all the characters are done very well here, especially when you compare the interactions to other games like GTA 5, where the dialogue feels a lot more choppy and sometimes you'll go whole drives without any dialogue at all. But here the dialogue is quick, whippy, and is always there for you, so you can never feel alone, which is key for a game like this. And to be honest, the interactions honestly make this game what it is. The presentation is incredible, the gameplay is well unique, which I'll get into later, but the characters and their interactions with each other are the driving force into why I like this game so much. Because at the core, this game is about characters that have gone through so much and are trying to get past their mistakes from their past and trying to redeem themselves with what they're doing now. And you can really see that in certain conversations you can get in this game. Like in one conversation with Rocket about how he reveals that he was controlled by these people and rebuilt over and over and over again. And it's sad to hear, and this adds depth to Rocket as a character. Or the talk you can have with Drax where he opens up about his perspective on the team and his past. Or when you find out more about Gamora and her relationship with Thanos and the fact that she killed her own sister. All of these conversations add depth and emotion to all of these characters. And everyone on the team has funny jokes and gags as well, but the funniest characters are without a doubt Drax and Rocket. Like seriously, some of the jokes that Rocket and Drax or anyone in this game said had me on the floor laughing. That's how clever and funny the jokes were in this game. The Guardians designs look different this time around, with an original spin by Square Enix, and I really like that Square Enix took an original approach to designing the Guardians. It was a very risky move, especially after the whole Avengers game fiasco, but I think it was worth it because these designs look straight up awesome, I can't even lie. My personal favorite member from the Guardians is probably Drax, just because his lines and his line delivery is done so well, it's really off the wall. And the core Guardians aren't the only characters in this game though. There are also other sided characters in this game like Kor-El, Mantis, and Cosmo, and these are all great and funny characters with great dialogue. But I think the best sided character in my opinion is Nikki. She's the most developed since she has the most screen time, but I think her father and daughter dynamic with Peter Quill was really touching. And when Peter finds out that Nikki isn't his daughter, you can see that he's disappointed, and that was also a very touching scene, but we'll touch on that later in this video, no pun intended. But overall, the characters in this game are really good and really developed, and I think it was probably one of the best parts in this game. The combat in this game is very repetitive and feels forced in a game like this. And it wouldn't be that big of a problem in my opinion if the combat wasn't so shallow. And most of the fights are pretty easy if you just spam. And even at harder difficulties, this game is still pretty easy. And by the end of the game, it just feels like a grind fest, you know, with you just shooting more enemies and stuff like that. You can use the other members of the Guardians to do special moves, kinda like in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. To be honest, lots of the gameplay here does feel like Dragon Ball Z Kakarot for some reason. I don't know, Square Enix took inspiration from Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. I don't know why, because Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is an anime action RPG game at its core, and Guardians of the Galaxy is a superhero core combat game. So they're two very different games, but I just saw that connection. But it is cool. I like it because I love Dragon Ball, and I love, you know, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is a great game, so it is pretty cool. And some of the combos you can pull off in this game are crazy and satisfying to watch. Even just pulling a basic quick dash to punch an enemy looks cool, and especially badass to pull off playing as Peter Quill. And speaking of Peter Quill, Peter's main 4 moves are 1. The Vantage Point, which lets Star-Lord or Peter Quill use his boots to rise in the air for a longer period of time. Now this move is good especially in the beginning of the game, but as you move through the story, this move is rarely used since Peter's other moves are just straight up better. The next move Peter has is the Fan of the Hammer, where Star-Lord or Peter Quill again can unleash a rapid fire of blaster shots. Now this move is very similar to Vegeta's consecutive energy blast move from Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. And look, I know that I'm keep referencing Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, but that's just because Guardians of the Galaxy and Dragon Ball Z Kakarot are surprisingly similar in so many ways. But that's for a different comparison for a different video. Now Peter Quill's second to last move is the Eye of the Hurricane, where Peter spirals up in the air and throws grenades down at his opponents. This move is also very similar to Delsin Rowe's Sky Bomb move from Infamous Second Son. This move is also a little more flashy and is useful when there's a ton of enemies around you. And the final move Peter has is the Shield of Spartax. It's basically just Peter becomes invincible for a short period of time. Now these moves are all pretty good and creative on Square Enix's part. Peter also has elemental powers for his guns, like the ice power that freezes his opponents or the environment around him if you want as well. His gun then also has the electrical power, which can send an electrical current to enemies or his environments. We also have the wind power, where you can shoot your gun and pull the enemy towards you, and you can land some pretty good melee damage by doing that. It's a pretty good elemental power. And the final power you have is the plasma power. Now I don't know why they call it the plasma power exactly, since this is basically fire, not plasma, but it basically melts certain environments and hurts enemies over time. All of these powers are well repetitive, all have a purpose, and are semi-useful in combat. When your team gauge fills up, you can huddle your team for a team talk, and if you say the right things, you and your team will get fighting boosts. But the best part for me is the music that plays when this happens. This is just another example of how good this soundtrack is and how good of a job Square Enix did on getting the right songs for the right occasions. But I gotta say, it is disappointing to not play as the other members of the Guardians. I was really looking forward to that when I played this game, and when I found out I couldn't, not even just me and many others were pretty disappointed, you know. But I think that Square Enix handled it the best they could considering the circumstances they were in. But let's talk about the boss fights in this game. The boss fights here are very hit or miss. The first boss fight you do is versus this tentacle monster that is under Lady Hellbender's rule, and is defeated by shooting his tentacles in weak points in general. Now this boss fight isn't very deep and is very repetitive, but this is the first boss fight after all, so I guess it gets a pass. But the second boss fight is versus the Blood Brothers, and this boss fight honestly had a lot of potential to be great, with how you have to drag one brother away from the other to do damage. But I think the boss fight falters in terms of it being too easy and for the concept just not being executed properly in general. You then have a mini boss fight versus Thanos himself, where every time you attack him, another Thanos appears. Now I think this boss fight was very unique, and it was tricky to beat and had great emotional weight to it. I just think this boss fight falters in it being too short and not really feeling like a boss but just a hard encounter in general. Now, one of the final bosses you have in this game is versus Fin Fang Foom, and I think the problem with this boss, and it's not really just a problem, but the way this boss fight was hyped up. The game, and more specifically Drax, hypes up Fin Fang Foom to be this ultimate final big boss fight for you to face, and it just does not live up to that at all. Another late game fight is versus Raker, and it's just the same problem since Raker is the main antagonist of the game and it's hyped up to be this whole mastermind behind the game, right? So his boss fight is hyped to absurd degrees and it just also does not live up to the hype. Sure, he does solid hits to you and deals solid damage to you, but it really is nothing special and it's disappointing, especially for a late game boss fight like this one. And the fight versus Magnus can't even be called a boss fight to me. It just feels like waves of endless enemies coming after you. So overall, the bosses aren't really the best part of this game and really do not help the gameplay in any way, shape, or form. But just like in Infamous, you can impact the story by saying certain things in this game. Now, this karma system was also in the Telltale Guardians of the Galaxy game, and was actually the main selling point of that game, so it's cool seeing where Square Enix took their inspiration from. This game's design structure is very similar to God of War's design structure, where you have a linear path to take, but you can explore to find collectibles. Apart from certain levels like where you visit Planet Nowhere, where you have a lot of free roam, apart from those kind of levels, most of the levels keep this basic design structure, which I like because it's consistent. But speaking of collectibles, there are a ton of collectibles you can get in this game, like the suits you can obtain. You get suits just by finding them in levels, and this is a massive 180 to what Square Enix did with the Avengers game, where most of the suits in that game you had to buy with real money. There are other collectibles you can get like crafting parts, but the main selling point of the collectibles are the suits you can get in this game. The sections where you're driving the Milano are super fun and nerve-wracking to say the least, and it feels like you're playing a Star Wars game when you're doing those sections. You can also craft stuff in this game. This mechanic is very simple. It's like in Minecraft where you can craft a wooden sword, but the only difference here is that my boy Rocket is crafting the stuff for you. The puzzles in Guardians were surprisingly hard at times, unless you have hints on, of course, which I've expressed my distaste of in other videos. But I do like how you need your team members to help you in most puzzles. This adds this sense of you actually being in a team and you just not doing all of this solo. Now, the glitches in this game are few and far in between, but when they do eventually occur, it's bad to say the least. But in Square Enix's defense, they did patch a lot of these issues the game had on launch day, which is commendable, but a lot of the issues are still here, like Peter getting stuck on random environments, Peter falling through floors and environments not loading in properly. But in general, the gameplay in Guardians is very hit or miss in terms of enjoyment and in terms of actual quality. On Peter Quill's 13th birthday, his mother Meredith gifts him his elemental guns left by his father. That same day, Chitauri warriors kidnap Peter and kill Meredith. Many years later, Peter becomes a mercenary named Star-Lord and leads the Guardians of the Galaxy. In order to make money, the Guardians head into the Forbidden Quarantine Zone, established by the Nova Cops to store debris from the war, so they can capture a rare monster for Lady Hellbender. However, they are forced to flee the quarantine zone when Peter picks up a yellow gem. He finds and accidentally releases an alien entity. Now even basic fans know this quote-unquote yellow gem is a soul stone, and will become more important later in the story, so watch out for that. But the Guardians flee and are intercepted by the Nova Corps and the patrol ship, aka Hallows Hope, captained by none other than Kor-El, Peter's former lover. Now Kor-El detains the Guardians alongside Raker, who is the quote-unquote Universal Church of Truth, who was caught trespassing in the quarantine zone as well to search for his quote-unquote golden god. Peter then meets a young Nova Corps cadet named Nikki Gold, who happens to be Kor-El's daughter, leading Peter to suspecting that he might be Nikki's father. Kor-El agrees to give the Guardians 3 cycles to pay their giant fine, which seems fine at face value, but the Guardians are completely broke. So the Guardians decide to scam Lady Hellbender by selling one of their own monsters, aka either Groot or Rocket. However you choose, the plan goes horribly wrong, but luckily the Guardians are forced to flee, not before obtaining their money, of course. Enraged, Lady Hellbender swears revenge and hires the Lethal Legend to pursue them. The Guardians then travel to the Rock, which is the Nova Corps outpost where Hallis Hope is docked, but find several Nova Corps officers stationed there, claiming that they must spread their promise. The Hallis Hope leaves the station and the Guardians decide to flee to nowhere, where Quill plans to ask Cosmo, the space dock, for help. But in a turn of events, Cosmo arrests the Guardians after they get into a fight with the Blood Brothers. But Peter makes a deal with Cosmo to investigate Hallis Hope, which is now transmitting a mysterious signal. Now if Cosmo agrees to this deal, he has to get the charges against the Guardians dropped. But either way, Cosmo agrees and the Guardians board Hallis Hope and find a massive cannon siphoning faith energy from the planet below. They are then captured by Raker, who takes them to meet the matriarch of his church, and to Peter's horror, the matriarch is Nikki herself. Nikki's in possession of the Soul Stone, which allows her to brainwash thousands of alien followers, with the quote-unquote promise trapping them in illusions crafted from their deepest desires, and harnessing their devotion as faith energy to power their church's fleet of ships and machines. Nikki then tries to tempt the Guardians with the promise, but they each manage to resist and break free before escaping the church, although Drax is still shaken by what he witnessed in his promise, and Peter learns that Kor-El was killed by the mysterious entity he previously released from the Soul Stone. Drax then succumbs to his promise and imprisons the team, but with help from Mantis, the Guardians enter Drax's mind and force him to accept that his promise isn't real. They also encounter Adam Warlock, the church's original golden god, who faked his own death and went to hiding on Mantis' planet. Warlock reveals that the alien entity controlling Nikki is in fact his dark side, Magnus, whom he sealed in the Soul Stone to keep contained. Magnus is manipulating Raker and the church to gain faith energy on which he can feed on. So with no other options, the Guardians turn to Lady Hellbender for help. So the Guardians gift the legendary Fin Fang Foom to her, and she agrees to aid in the assault on the church's flagship. During their assault, Raker traps the Guardians in an energy field, but Peter is able to enter Nikki's promise. And with the help of Kor-El's spirit, who reveals Nikki is an adopted war orphan and in fact not Peter's daughter. Peter then convinces Nikki to accept Kor-El's death, freeing her from her promise and Magnus' control, while also unlocking her hidden powers. The Guardians kill Raker while Warlock absorbs Magnus into his body, ending the threat of the church. As the galaxy celebrates being freed from the church's brainwashing, the Guardians take their leave, with Nikki becoming the newest member. But Magnus proves to be too strong for Warlock to contain, and takes over his body. But guided by Mantis, Peter risks his own life by physically wielding the Soul Stone to imprison Magnus once again. Warlock thanks the Guardians for the help and takes custody of the Soul Stone, promising to come to them for help if he needs it. Peter contemplates on how to take care of Nikki as the Guardians head off to handle their next assignment, ending the story. Now the story was honestly really good, with emotional breakdowns, funny gags, and great interactions. But I can't lie, the pacing isn't great in this game, especially in the later chapters. Some characters also weren't properly developed as well, like Lady Hellbender and the Nova Corps. But the majority of characters were good enough, which is impressive since there are 4 main characters in this game. And the dialogue in the story feels so real, it's almost cathartic in a way. And there's certain sections and levels where you just walk around an area just talking to your fellow Guardians. And this was a great move by the devs since it lets the characters feel more real with the conversations, but it also lets you take in what the hell is going on in this game. And the writing in this game is really clever at times, with the game saying tiny things or showing tiny things to set up future events. Like Drax talking about Fin Fang Foom at the start of the game, and the Soul Stone being in the beginning of the game. And honestly, the attention to detail in this game is really commendable. And the banter between the Guardians and story cutscenes was funny and delightful to watch. And as the story goes on, the banter between the Guardians is different and isn't less convoluted, showing the Guardians' growth. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy nails not just most of its story beats, but it's also jam-packed with personality and fun, and you can really tell that Square Enix really enjoyed and cared for making this game, which can be debated about for their previous superhero title, the Avengers game. Guardians of the Galaxy does have a lot of issues though, like the repetitive gameplay, glitches, and the pathetic excuse for boss fights. So Guardians isn't the perfect game by any means, but comparing this game to other action games at its time, Guardians of the Galaxy stands on its own as being a super fun single player experience, and honestly, even if you're not a Guardians fan, I strongly recommend you at least check out this game. Hey my beautiful people, thank you for watching this video, and if you stayed to the end, you're a real one. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your support, you know, it really means the world to me, you know. But yeah, I'm on camera. I know, what a surprise. This is pretty new. I mean, it's not really new. I did put my face in one of my old videos. I think it was why the Neo arc is almost perfect video. But I haven't put my face in a video for a while, so I thought, you know, why not just, you know, pop in here, you know, say hello face to face. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say for this video. Stay healthy, stay safe, you know, stay positive. You know, it's all positive vibes in here. You know, we all the chosen ones. You know how it is. But yeah, I appreciate all of your support more than you know. Now, like, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. The chosen one out.